Welcome, everybody. We're just letting everybody in. We'll just give it a second here to get everybody in from the waiting room. But since it is 9:03, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome to the November morning meetup of the Arts and Culture Accessibility Cooperative. What we mean, I do that every time, what we mean when we say IDEA. My name is Megan, and I am the Arts and Culture Director with Mind's Eye, and I will be your facilitator today. I am a white woman in my 40s with long gray hair that happens to also be blue today, long blue and gray hair. This webinar will be recorded, is currently being recorded. It will be emailed to you after, it will probably be next week with a list of resources. You can also find it on the Mind's Eye YouTube channel, probably next week. We are using the Q&A box. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A box throughout the presentations, and then we will come get to those at the end. You can also at the end raise your hand and we can turn on your microphone if you would rather do it that way. Closed captions are available right now if you hit the CC box at the bottom. And live audio description is also available via the Live Voice app. And I will show you a QR code in just a second, but if you already have the if you already have the app, you can put in this code 770874. Also, the chat to everyone has been disabled during the presentations because it interferes with screen readers. You can still chat directly to me as the host and to panelists. So let me give you that QR code. Also, before I forget, if you're not part of our Facebook group, please do so. You can do that at facebook.com/groups/ACACSTL. And also there will be a survey after the webinar that will pop up via Zoom. And also I will email it to you. So it's greatly appreciated if you fill that out. So here is the QR code. It's in the middle of your screen and it's giant. So if you'd like to listen to audio description, it is available via Live Voice. If you don't have the Live Voice app already, if you screenshot or if you take a picture of that QR code, it'll come up automatically. So you won't have to download the app and then go back. And we would like to acknowledge that Mind's Eye is located in Belleville, Illinois, the ancestral lands of many people, including those commonly known as the Sioux, Quapaw, Miamia, Osage, Kaskaskia, and Kickapoo. We also acknowledge those who passed near our area during their forced removal, including the Cherokee, Delaware, Sac and Fox, and Shawnee. The process of knowing and acknowledging the ground beneath our feet is a way of honoring and expressing gratitude for the people on this land before us. So I am going to stop and I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful moderator today, Tori. And thank you so much, Tori, for being our host today. I'm going to turn off my camera and get out of here. So take it away, Tori.
Thanks, Megan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tori Rezek. I am a white woman with short salt and pepper hair. It's the first time I've ever said that, but realizing it's true this morning. I am the development manager for the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival, and I am also a chair member on the committee for ACAC. So I'm very proud to welcome you this morning to our meeting. This event kicks off the nominating period for the Arts and Culture Accessibility Cooperative's third annual IDEA or IDEA Awards. IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. Each January, ACAC is proud to recognize individuals and organizations who exemplify IDEA in our community. This morning, we are joined by past award winners to discuss how inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility shape their work. While each of these award winners incorporate all parts of IDEA into their work, We're going to pull those letters apart a little bit. Each of our panelists this morning is going to focus on one part of IDEA. We hope their answers spark some ideas about other individuals and organizations who are currently doing this important work in our community, or how your own organization might implement similar tools to propel your own work. A short Q&A will follow after we've spoken with our fourth panelist. Starting us off this morning with the I in IDEA is Julia Hogan Laurenson. Julia is an arts administrator and educator, producer, dramaturg, director, and deviser. She is also the artistic administrative coordinator for Metro Theater Company. Metro Theater Company was awarded the 2021 IDEA Award in the organization category. Their mission is, inspired by the intelligence and emotional wisdom of young people, Metro Theater Company creates professional theater, fosters inclusive community, and nurtures meaningful learning through the arts, Julia, how does Metro Theater define inclusion? And how does inclusivity guide Metro's work with young people?
Hi, yeah, thank you, Tori. I'm Julia. I use she, her pronouns. And a quick visual description. I am a white woman in her 20s with medium length brown hair, wearing a blue sweater this morning. So yeah, how does Metro define inclusion firstly? I think it's, first of all, challenging to break this down, and reflecting on coming to this panel, I was having trouble breaking it down for myself in thinking of how do we pull apart the I and how do we talk about inclusion without talking about accessibility, without talking about other elements of IDEA. And I think for Metro, it specifically goes back to the question, because we are focused on young people and working for young people and their families, it's thinking about how are we creating a welcoming space for young people and their families, and as many young people as possible and their families. And whether that looks like providing pay what you wish performances, or providing audio description at some of our main stage performances, thinking about how can we reach as many young people as possible, and also doing so in a way that is respectful, as our mission says, of their intelligence and wisdom. So we're not coming in to say, hey, we as adults have all the answers, and instead, because we know we certainly don't, thinking about how can we give them the tools to help them learn how to be more respectful and empowered members of our community for many, many years to come. And I think particularly also when looking at inclusion and the focus on young people for Metro, there is something really exciting and potent about it to me, in that we're working with young people, and at a most basic level, their brains are not developed, and there is like so much change that is possible and that is happening continuously. And so I think that is really exciting, and has helped us shift and be ready to shift as needed. And so I think in terms of how does it guide our work more specifically, it really it's interesting because sometimes it's very specific and intentional planning and strategic planning and kind of that high level thinking, as our managing director Joe would say. And sometimes it's also accidental or really small things, or things that feel small, whether it's like descriptive hyperlinks in emails or things like that just might signal and help anyone that we're communicating with, whether it's our stakeholders or audience members, know that we are intent on creating a space that they feel welcome in. And then off of that, being receptive to feedback of when we get it wrong and need to course correct. I think off of that, we're also right now in the midst of launching our Every Child initiative, which is a 10-year goal to reach every child in the St. Louis area and surrounding region, which, oh boy, I can say, oh boy, I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this yet. We're in the midst of figuring out how to begin to track how we're going to do this. So very much in the early stage, but in thinking about how do we reach every child, it is crucial that we think about the barriers that prevent either us going into schools as part of education programs, or students coming to us or us going to them with shows, and thinking about what those barriers could be and are, and how we can break those down, whether it's a monetary barrier, whether it's an ability barrier, whatever that looks like.
Julia, can you share a little bit more about this initiative? I know you're very, very early stages here. Are there ideas about, have you identified some of those barriers and how you might kind of overcome them at this point?
Yeah, at this point, the big question is, how can we support this financially? Because in a lot of cases, there are schools that don't have the funding to be able to bring our programs to their schools or for them to come to us. So right now it's about getting the financial frameworks in place actually that would allow us to continue to offer programming, particularly at no cost to schools and classrooms and students that need it. So I think we're trying to start with the financial underpinnings and then figure other elements out of it from there.
Definitely. As a fundraiser, I definitely understand that part. Very important part, getting a new initiative off the ground. You touched a little bit on your work specifically with children or with young people and young audiences. How does Metro, what steps do you all take to make sure that their voices are heard and that they're included in some of your decision-making and programming?
Yeah.
Places?
It's a work in progress is the best answer I have. We rely really, really heavily on our absolutely incredible education department, who is in the classroom with students almost every week, and kind of relying on them and what they're seeing kind of on the ground, so to speak, because I end up spending a lot of my day sitting at my computer writing emails and whatnot. And so relying on the people that are on the ground with students and with young people. And I think also then remaining receptive to feedback from audience, as well as thinking about communicating and engaging like our educators in our community and other stakeholders and people that are close to young people, so that we're kind of hearing their perspectives as well. And then particularly also as we're developing new shows or just putting up a show that's already been done, thinking about how can we, whether it's bringing in a test audience, or I know a best practice throughout the theater for young audiences industry is to really, when you're in the development of a show and like the script has not been set and things like that, can you bring in young people and have them solicit feedback? And so we were really excited to start doing that this past October when we had a development workshop for our upcoming musical Spells of the Sea. And we were really grateful to have a few young people in the space, and the feedback that they provided was just so incredibly valuable, because at some point I'm not even that far removed from them, but I can only guess how it's landing in some respects. And so you use the guesses until you shouldn't anymore, I think.
That's amazing to have those young folks kind of in that early development stage really is helping shape this new piece. That's really amazing work.
And I will say out of that, I was in the room after we had done this reading, and it was just our playwright and our dramaturg. And the playwright was kind of sitting there marveling at what had just happened. And she goes, I see exactly who I'm writing for now. And so having that clarity for all our creatives, I think was really beneficial and kind of came about as a little bit of an accident. And now we're kind of refocusing and being like, how do we continue to incorporate this, because it's so vital and just so cool.
One of those things that you stumble upon and say, oh, this is something we need to keep doing. That's amazing. Well, Julia, Spells of the Sea is opening soon. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Spells of the Sea and your education program, Building Community Through Drama?
Absolutely. So Spells of the Sea will be our next big production coming up at the beginning of February. As I mentioned, it's a new musical written by two recent grads of the undergrad program at UT Austin, Gwenny Govia and Anna Pickett. And this started as a podcast. The show started as a podcast actually during the pandemic, when as students, they couldn't do theater. And so they ended up creating this podcast about this young woman named Finley Frankfurter, who lives in a fishing village on the East Coast and is really terrible at fishing. And her dad happens to be like the king of fishing. And so really it's this journey of her kind of coming of age and finding a place in her community, and how she can contribute, and also the people she meets along the way, and kind of it ends up becoming this really beautiful intergenerational story about how can how can we rely on the spunkiness and passion of a younger generation and the wisdom and even crankiness of an older generation. So that will be Spells of the Sea coming up. And in the meantime, our education department, I feel the need to shout them out, is also in the classroom every week, particularly with our flagship program, our flagship education program, Building Community Through Drama, which asks and empowers young people to examine conflict situations in their classrooms and in their communities, and how they can be empowered with the tools to build community and address conflict as it arises.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Julia, for sharing, for representing Metro this morning, and we will all look forward to Spells of the Sea in February. Next, we will head over to Jessireé Jenkins to explore the D in IDEA, diversity. Jessireé Jenkins combines her professional background and interests in the arts and arts technology, civic engagement, and social justice to shape the roles she takes on. Jessireé believes in the power of communities and the impact that seemingly ordinary people can have. Jessireé is also the manager of grants and programs for the Arts and Education Council. The Arts and Education Council is our region's only United Arts Fund supported by private contributions from individuals, corporations, foundations, and institutions committed to the value and benefit of the arts for our community. Arts and Education Council grantees not only produce and present great art, they also maintain viable, impactful arts education and outreach programming for K-12 students throughout the bi-state area. The Arts and Education Council was awarded the 2020 IDEA Award in the supporter category. Jessireé, can you speak a little bit about how the Arts and Education Council defines diversity and how diversity guides A&E's work as an arts fund?
Yes, good morning. I'm a Black woman, mid-30s, little haircut, you know, flying every other way. And so we define diversity as understanding that even when people appear the same, they are different in many different ways. And diversity extends beyond ethnicity and race. I know that's the first thing that comes to people's minds, like, oh, they're either Black or white or Asian or some other ethnic group or racial background, but it's more than that.
It does go so far beyond just those ethnic markers. Can you share a little bit more about how, in what other ways you might consider diversity in A&E's work?
Yes, so we introduced our own idea, framework, and blueprint in 2021 after about 6 months of working with members from our board and getting all of that together and being able to package it up to them. And the way that we incorporate it is in art form, in presentation, and in organization. So when we are thinking about collaborating or becoming a community partner with an organization, we take a really intentional look at who they work with, who makes up their staff, who is on their board. When we are granting organizations, what kind of art form is this? Is this organization hiring from within the community? Outside of that, you know, who are they partnering with? So just taking that extra step to be more intentional to see who we are working with and how we can all work better together.
And that blueprint has been I have only been in the city since 2019. And I think that blueprint has really led some huge change just from what I have seen in the last 3 years. Can you speak a little bit about how you might have witnessed some of that impact?
Oh, I will be very honest. The impact has not been all great. It has not been all rainbows. I have had to have some very real conversations with many of these organizations because it's hard to have somebody to tell you, despite, you know, this beautiful artwork that you're producing, you only have white people up in here. Right. So you're not representative of the community in which you are claiming to serve. And then you have those really great and enriching conversations where people are like, oh, I get it. I understand. This is a blind spot. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I wish I could say it was just like this kind of organization, but it is really across all parts of it. Some people don't even realize that they haven't hired from within the community, that they are not recognizing the talent in every level. So it's not just an actor or an actress, like who's running the lights, who's running the soundboard, who's creating the costumes, that kind of situation.
That is a great observation. I think we see a lot of, in the theater where I work, we do see a lot of that change on stage, or, you know, featured artists that are representative of the community, but leadership maybe is not representative of the community, people who are working with the company every single day beyond just, you know, what the audience may be seeing or maybe experiencing. Are there other initiatives or new pieces about A&E's work that you'd like to share with this group this morning that y'all are working towards?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we're working towards is our 60th anniversary. It is going to be in February of 2023, but before that, we'll be having our Arts Awards. And since it's our big show, it's going to be a little over 20 honorees this year. The Sumner Recovery Plan is going to be a part of that show with Aaron. So when I saw his face pop up, I was like, oh, look at that. So that's our big thing. And then we also have some new initiatives that we are working towards rolling out for 2023, because we're in a period of transition. We just got a brand new CEO in July. Her name is Laia Flores. So with her stewardship, we are going to be unfolding some things for the community, which I think will have a great impact and push us and stretch us to be more inclusive and collaborative with those in which we serve. And even being on this meeting, I realized, I was like, well, I don't know if we have interpreters for the Arts Awards. Let me check myself. And I wrote a note so I can, you know, put that into the ear of those that are really planning the show.
That is actually, and we all work together towards these things that, you know, we don't realize that we have that blind spot, and you show up in a room and go, oh, well, let me check what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And adjust.
Yeah,
Well,
none of us gets it
Jessireé.
right all the time, but it's being willing to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jessireé. We will look forward to the A&E Awards in February. And we thank you for all your work that you personally do. I thank you for all your work as a grant manager, but also for the work that you represent with A&E.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we had a lovely segue from Jessireé. We're going to talk about equity with Aaron Williams, who represents the Sumner Recovery Plan. Aaron endeavors to catalyze innovative solutions for land use challenges in under-resourced communities that build coalitions between public and private sectors. Aaron has spent the last 15 years in St. Louis's design and construction industry. He is the co-founder and board chairman of For the Ville, a community-based cultural organization working to safeguard the legacy of North St. Louis's Ville neighborhood and catalyzing preservation through tourism, art, and economic development. He is also the chair of the new Sumner Recovery Plan at Sumner High School in the Ville. Sumner was one of 7 public schools recommended for closure in 2020. Community leaders of over a dozen arts and culture organizations joined forces to keep the school open. Now in its second year, the Sumner Recovery Plan brings resources and professional teaching artists from a dozen St. Louis arts and culture organizations directly into Sumner High School for daily arts education. Students select from 6 art tracks: dance, drama, music, visual art, fashion, and living arts museum studies. Daily free classes fill the final 90 minutes of the school day. At the end of each semester, student showcases exemplify the arts students' work on stage and what they've been doing in the classroom. Aaron, if you could first describe yourself and then share with us how you define equity and how equity has helped shape the Sumner Recovery Program.
Good morning, Aaron Williams. I am a medium height, brown skin male with a beard and a buzz cut or a Caesar cut, whatever description you want to use, a low cut hairstyle, and I have earrings to separate me from the other bearded guys. And what was your other question? Sorry.
How would you define equity? And can you share how equity has helped shape the Sumner Recovery Plan?
Sure. So I would define equity first as acknowledgement that everyone or not everyone has access and platforms necessary to control or protect their own dignity. And I think we have to first start with the acknowledgement. After the acknowledgement, I would say it's about implementing and supporting systems that ensure all communities have the opportunity to meaningfully participate, lead, and thrive. And I'm sorry, give me the second part of the question again.
How has equity, or that definition of equity, helped shape the Sumner Recovery Plan?
Okay, so I'll answer that by saying what the Sumner Advisory Board, by way of the Sumner Recovery Plan, is committed to in terms of equity. One, separate from all of the programs you already mentioned, I think we are committed to building a governance structure that gives a broad representation of the community that the school serves, the ability to influence and oftentimes make decisions about the students' learning opportunities and the culture and climate of the school. So essentially giving them more access to St. Louis public schools, which sometimes is a hard thing to do. This also, I like to say, it's a continuation of the same spirit that came from the concerned Black parents of St. Louis Public that advocated for the new Sumner facility that was constructed in the Ville in 1910. And it's also a continuation of the concerned parents of North St. Louis, which is another organized group of Black parents that called for St. Louis Public to actually comply with Brown versus Board of Education requirements with the Liddell case. So this is just a continuation of that spirit where we have to organize community to guarantee that equitable access. Another way that we hold true to principles of equity is that we try to acknowledge that students in many public schools, specifically ones like Sumner High School that have the Title I designation, they serve a majority Black and low-income population and are oftentimes in under-resourced communities. We acknowledge that they often aren't afforded opportunities to explore robust enrichment activities during their academic experience. So in acknowledging that, that's how we commit to bringing a lot of these arts and cultural programs into the school. We're also committed to equity by using the collective impact model, where we made an early decision that we're not going to create a new thing, right, that concentrates power with amongst a few, but instead we're going to call everyone into this conversation about the restoration of Sumner High School, so that the power continues to not be concentrated and that people have some understanding of how they can be involved in that conversation as this thing continues on into the future. But it also allows everyone to accept accountability for the future of this institution, which is also important because I think oftentimes the greater St. Louis region, once these fire events sort of calm down, most of us think, oh, that small group of people, they have it, we'll let them do it. And we're just going to assume that everything is fine unless we hear about this again. And that often puts the burden on the least resourced of our community to try to restore a very important institution. And then lastly, we are committed to equity by trying to protect one of the most important cultural institutions in St. Louis that even today has not been and continues to not receive or continue to not be sufficiently preserved and appreciated simply because of institutional racism. So we've pulled a community together that represents more than just the community that the school serves to protect this institution, so that the message is not just coming from one side, but it's coming from everywhere. And we're thinking together about how we can lift up this story.
That collective impact model, Aaron, really, I think, sets this Sumner initiative apart. And I have watched this kind of come up through working with you and working at the Shakespeare Festival, as it has a heavy hand in that, has had a heavy hand in that process. Could you share a little bit more about how that kind of collective impact model has led this program from the beginning and how you implemented it with this group, with this board? Yeah,
Absolutely. So I guess go back to the start of this where, after St. Louis Public Schools announced that Sumner was on the closure list, our co-founder, Julia Allen, decided that despite being someone with rather little political stock, that she's going to write a letter to the district and to the press about how this is an irresponsible decision. So I think the first example of collective impact came from how the arts community rallied behind that, thanks to the leadership of Shakespeare Festival. They saw our letter, and Shakespeare called me and said, "How can we help you?" And they came with an idea too, with the question. They were like, "Well, how can we help you? And what about us getting a letter signed by as many arts organizations as we can in the region?" So first example of collective impact. Moving forward from that, I think Shakespeare and For the Ville were very aware of where the power defaults in this process. We're dealing with very large and powerful arts organizations, but they never tried to suck up all the air in the room or take up too much space. They allowed the community to lead the conversation. So For the Ville being on the ground, we organized community organizations and members to say, what can this recovery process look like? What are your ideas? I would also like to say the St. Louis public sort of echoed the same behavior by challenging us to call other groups to the table that were trying to keep Sumner open, like 2 Sumner alumni groups that had put together plans. So we started there, organizing all of these voices and saying, how can we build a recovery plan that includes everyone's ideas? Once that recovery plan was constructed, we then were committed to having representation from all of those voices in the governing group of that recovery plan, which is the Sumner Advisory Board. So we reserve spaces for specific community members, including the parents and students and teachers of the school. And then we sought out the voices that we felt like we needed to have for the advisory board to be like a holistic representation of Sumner High School. And that is the group that continues to make the decisions and make the commitments of the Sumner Recovery Plan as we sort of navigate through our second year of this process.
Can you speak about how that second year has kicked off?
Oh, it's going great. So we were not held responsible for increasing enrollment in the first year. But in the second year, our responsibility was to increase enrollment by 10%. We increased it by 30%. Also, we added 2 new pathways with fashion and museum studies. And we are currently working on adding more. Also, I like to say that we strengthen our collaboration with St. Louis Public. We've finalized the language in our memorandum of understanding, and it is being executed right now by the Board of Education, but also St. Louis Public is committed to hiring staff to help us with our work. So we continue to exhibit like true partnership and collective impact in this process. Now, we've also welcomed other institutions into the process. Annie Malone occupies the top level of the school building now. SLDC is taking over a West Wing, and within their space, WashU is running a place-based like graduate level program called Studio Lab, where they interface with Sumner students and the community to imagine what Sumner can be like as a new community anchor, and also reimagine what the community can look like with more investment from greater St. Louis or the greater St. Louis region. So all of that is taking place inside of the building now, which means that Sumner is alive. And we just want to continue doing this work to make sure that we leave it with a structure that's actually sustainable, one that doesn't depend on any particular organization or person that's currently doing the work for the school.
Amazing. And to think that there's so much activity going on in that building right now, and that it would have been closed had this plan not been launched 2 years ago. Well, Aaron, I think there's an event coming up here at the end of December at the Missouri History Museum. Can you share a little bit about that here?
Yeah, speaking of collective impact and accountability, So for the Ville, as a community-based cultural organization, one of the things that we are very loud about is sort of reclamation of Sumner and the Ville's legacy, and that really making sure that other institutions or people know that if you are using these stories or using this message, then it should benefit the community in some type of way. And that led to the History Museum committing to work with us for our winter showcase. So we usually do a showcase every semester of the students' art or talent. And in December, we're doing one that's not only putting the students' art and talent on display at the History Museum, but also honoring the legacy of Dr. Kenneth Brown Phillips, who was the music instructor at Sumner High School. So really doing all the things and sort of putting on display the work that we've been doing at Sumner High School. So yeah, that's on December 1st, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a very diverse group of storytellers and musicians, including Sumner students. There will also be an exhibit about Dr. Phillips and Alida Ward Wells that was created by Sumner High School students in the Museum Studies program. So it's really going to be a great event. The Phillips family is coming in town to participate in the event, and we will be honoring other vocal instructors in St. Louis Public Schools during the event for carrying on the legacy of Dr. Kenneth Brown Phillips.
Amazing. Well, I know I am looking forward to that event on December 1st. I hope we'll see lots of other folks at that event at the museum as well. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and finally, last but not least, we will touch on the A in accessibility with my colleague, Adam Flores. Adam is a director, actor, producer, and educator. He is also the community engagement and education manager for the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. The Shakespeare Festival's mission is to foster community and joy across the St. Louis region through the Shakespearean tradition of art for all. The festival was awarded the 2020 Idea Award in the organization category. Adam, if you would self-describe first, and then answer our two questions. How does the festival define accessibility, and in what ways does accessibility inform the festival's work?
Great. Thank you for having me. My name is Adam Flores. I use he, him pronouns. I am a 30-something-year-old Latino man in a blue beanie and I will also admit, salt and pepper beard. The salt is very much in the central of my face and not the whole way, and that's a new development that we're living with. I do not have earrings to set myself apart from Mr. Aaron Williams, my good friend. So the Shakespeare Festival, I think, part of our mission statement that you just read, Tori, that talks about the Shakespearean tradition of art for all, is kind of the fundamental part of our accessibility, that we want to think about all of the sort of barriers that come in the way of engaging with the work that we do, and acknowledging that oftentimes, one of the first barriers is Shakespeare's language itself as a barrier to accessibility, and also a barrier to sort of cultural accessibility. Many people in our region think Shakespeare is this thing that's not for me, it's over there. Theater is this thing that's not for me, it's over there. Art is not this thing for me, it's over there. And so finding ways to break down those barriers. And I think accessibility is about finding ways that everyone can interact with what you've created in the capacity that works best for them. That it is not a one size fits all experience for everybody. Part of our greatest strength is that we are a free outdoor theater experience. And so if you can move through the outdoor spaces that we have in our region, then there's a good chance you can stumble into one of our programs. I think the other side of this is our main stage production happens in Shakespeare's Glen Forest Park, right next to just east of Art Hill. And that's a great location. And Forest Park is a jewel of our region and is incredibly accessible in lots of ways, but also it's not necessarily the most culturally accessible thing. It's not the place that everyone goes. It's not the place that everyone feels welcome. And it's not a place that's close to everyone. And sometimes the way that we like to treat it as. So one of our big accessible things is our tour co-production, which used to be a production that traveled into schools, similar to some of the work that Julia is doing over at Metro Theater. But we've now pivoted to making it going to parks and public spaces all over the region, because we also think that part of accessibility is not limiting it to just educational settings and not limiting it just to sort of Friday night entertainment settings as well, that like adults want to have engagement with educational resources on a Tuesday or Wednesday night just as much as anywhere else. And so that's kind of how that's gone. And we go to 24 different parks and public spaces all over the region. This includes being in the Ville and starting off there as a place of continual commitment, but then also going to Tower Grove Park, Edwardsville, Illinois, Herman, Missouri, Fairground Park, Carondelet, all the Cherokee Street, all these different kinds of places, as well as like Chesterfield Amphitheater, and providing an opportunity for this entertainment to come to you. And part of that is the accessibility, and part of that is what Mind's Eye has done, and what the other kinds of things is, how is this being presented and brought to you and to where you're at and to the spaces that feel the most welcoming to you. In Shakespeare's time, the Globe was seen as a truly kind of egalitarian space for meeting and gathering. It was designed to be for those with very little means and those with lots and lots of means and accessibility. And so we want to sit in that space as well, and kind of create that. Now we have things that we have to grow on, outdoor parks are not the most accessible for all mobility levels and all kind of positioning. Sitting and being quiet for, an hour and a half is not the most accessible. It helps that we're in parks. And so there's a little bit of freedom that happens, but there's spaces like that we just have to get better at. And then also too, the thing that I think all of us as arts, creators and generators know that there is a segment of our region that is really attuned to what kind of arts things are happening in the region. And then there's a segment that's not paying as much attention to that. And how do we make sure that we're getting to the folks that, are paying attention to different things and are interested in different things, and making sure that they're aware of the opportunities that are present to them, and finding ways to create programming that is of more interest to them. That's oftentimes where our Shakespeare in the Streets program comes in, is that we go into communities and engage with them for 12 to 18 months, talking to them and hearing their stories. And now that it's about them and it's for them and it's in their community, they're suddenly more aware of the opportunity that they have to go see a free arts and theater program. But there's just ways we can get better at that. And we're looking to the future for partnerships and relationships that would broaden kind of who's paying attention to what we're doing and what we're making in their community and then in other spaces. That's the long and short of it, Tori.
Thanks, Adam. You touched a bit on, that the Shakespeare Festival is outside, which has its own set of physical accessibility issues in Shakespeare Glen. Could you talk about addressing those kind of mobility issues in the Glen? And on this tour, and we do these programs in the streets, we're in a different location for the tour, different location every night. For Shakespeare in the Streets, we spend one weekend each year, but each year is a different location. Can you talk about how you kind of tackle all of those different venues with a lens towards accessibility?
We're getting better at it. And I think that the more we practice it, the more we understand what to start looking for. And that's similar to what we've all been echoing in this room, that like sometimes because of our privileges, we just don't know what we're looking for until we get there and we're like, oh my gosh, no one mowed the lawn. And so I didn't know that no one mowed the lawn, and I didn't realize how the problem was going to be that no one mowed the lawn. And so now how do I solve mowing the lawn? And that's an example, but like, you know, there's a bunch of other things. And then in that moment, I mean, I use that story a lot, is in that moment, then we find a neighbor who brings over a lawnmower for us and helps us mow the lawn, you know? And so there's that sense of like arriving in a community, kind of unassuming of what is there and what is expected and what is not there. You know, we learned a lot when we spent so much time in the Ville about what is expected and what is not expected and how to respond and how to make things happen. And so then you get better at looking around and starting to figure out what needs are going to be here. You know, we've gotten much better about, for instance, like making sure that we've got bathrooms in every location that we're going, because we can't assume that every park has maintained their bathroom and kept it up to the standard that would be available. We also cannot assume that every park has maintained an ADA accessible bathroom at every location. And so these are things that we didn't think about when we first started that we do think about a lot more now. And then the other side of it with the Glen is thinking about what is the experience like if you arrive, and understanding what the difficulties are, so that even if it is going to be a little bit harder for someone in a wheelchair to get where they want to go, we are aware that that is a difficulty. And so we can help them tackle that with grace and with a support and with energy, as opposed to a sort of fear or trepidation that this isn't a new need has arrived. And so I think it's really just also about, you know, what was mentioned earlier about like this like what happens when a new need is brought to us, and not shrinking away and not going in fear, and leading with grace and that. And I think that's something that we've all been kind of talking about is, okay, so what happens when we've found the blind spot? How do we respond to that without getting defensive, without getting upset, without getting hurt? And, you know, Jessireé was talking about, you know, leading those conversations and having people have those hard conversations. And that's something that we're constantly doing. And the pros and cons of it is that, you know, with Shakespeare in the Streets, we're there for one weekend, and by the end of it, I'm like, oh, I can solve all the problems now, and then we're gone. And so, you know, those kinds of tricky things are part of it. And we're just getting better like everyone else, and learning from other organizations who've been doing it longer and better than us.
It is definitely always a learning process. And as all of our panelists have said this morning, you know, we are doing this work and discovering like, oh, yep, there's a blind spot there, or we're doing it wrong. So the grace and ability to learn and ability to grow while doing this work is so important and vital. Adam, I know Shakespeare Festival is going to be in the summer. Is there anything that you would like to plug, either your programs or anything coming up here in the next few months?
Continue to plug the work at Sumner. I mean, it's been a big part of what we've been doing and a big part of where we're at. And I just, to echo Aaron, like, you know, I was one of the teaching artists in the classroom during the first year, and I'm still in there from time to time now. And just the culture of that space has grown and gotten so much better. And the students are reaping the benefits of having this kind of engagement, and Aaron's leadership and as well. And Miss Julia Allen and all those folks have just done an incredible job of continuing to hold people accountable for that work. But we are really excited about the programming that will be coming next summer with our main stage production, as well as our next touring production, which will go around to other locations that we're excited about. Highly recommend people keep an eye out for where the one that's closest to them, or bug me to get it to come to you. If you're feeling like one of our locations has not been something that is accessible to you, bug me and let me try to make that work for you. And then our Shakespeare in the Streets next year is going to be really exciting, and we've got a lot of work to do. And so, you know, if you, not to lead the cart before the horse too much, but, you know, we're really excited about having a really big conversation like the rest of the city about our soccer community. And we think that that's going to be a really exciting way to engage with people who don't always pay attention to Shakespeare, but do care about soccer and sport in the city, which we think are both really, really beautiful and important things that don't get heralded as much sometimes as we'd like. So if you got a soccer story, you should tell me.
So if you want the tour to come to you, or if you've got a story about soccer, get a hold of Adam Flores. Adam, thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. We've got about 10 minutes left here. I would like to take a little time for questions. If you've got a specific question for one of our panelists, please indicate who you'd like to speak with, or if you have a question for the group, You can note that and we'll do a quick round robin with each speaker. Megan, I need help to do questions if we have questions.
Yeah, we don't have any in the Q&A box right now, but I will keep an eye on that for you. I actually had one question that came to me via text, and it has been answered because the question at the beginning was, is that a pogo stick behind Adam? And then he moved and I said, yes, I'm pretty sure it is. So there you go. That was the burning question that was happening.
Yeah, it's a pogo stick, and that was given to me by someone who really likes finding things in alleys. And they were like, I found this in an alley, someone was giving it away. And I was like, I don't know that I needed that, but I now am very glad that I have a pogo stick. Yes, thank you.
Good. I will also, while we're waiting for more questions, I will give a shout out to Torco, Shakespeare Festival Torco, for coming to beautiful Belleville, Illinois. So for all of you Illinoisans that feel like nothing is ever there for us, thank you, Adam, for bringing us Shakespeare. Nothing happened when they crossed the river. The band didn't fall in. It was totally fine. So thanks to that. And while we wait for questions, I'll give a plug for an event that Mind's Eye has on Friday with the St. Louis Art Museum called Closer, and it is a program of live auditory performances. So yeah, round that out. It's the Art Museum, but it's auditory performances, and it's a spot program. So it's was created by their staff. So these are performances from like a security guard and all sorts of interesting things. And they're inspired by artworks in the art museum. So Mind's Eye collaborated with them to make sure that it was accessible for all of our folks who are blind or low vision or partially sighted. So it's at the Art Museum, 6 o'clock. It's free and it's going to be very, very interesting and entertaining. So I encourage you all to attend. Oh, we do have a question from Sheila. Are any organizations doing any more cross-generational work besides Julia at Metro?
That is a great question. Erin, so there's some of that work might be happening in the Ville with Sumner. If anyone else in our panel has any thoughts or knows anything about intergenerational work across the city, please share.
I would say that we've been intentional about getting with organizations who are doing intergenerational work. One of the dance companies, Consuming Kinetics Dance Company, is creating or has piloted a dance program specifically for older adults who have either not danced in a long time or have an interest in dancing, or, you know, just want to get out the house and socialize. You know, so that kind of work, and their teachers are young. They also work with students, so kind of bringing those two groups together.
Thank you, Jessireé.
I guess I'll say for the Ville, we aren't as intentional about intergenerational work as we could be, but we are an intergenerational organization. So we were founded by lifetime residents and then Gen Y volunteers, which would include myself. So even the formation of the organization was an experiment on intergenerational work. And then that, I guess, has sort of bled into our operations, like the tours that we give are often the partnership between younger and older members of the community, given the tours. But we could be a lot more intentional about it, for sure. And the same as Sumner. I mean, just by nature of what the institution is, you have to include the voices of the elders. And they, at the same time, have to learn how to work with the youth at the school, because as much as they want history to be the most important thing, it's actually about the learning experience of the children that are in the school. So we've had our challenges with that, but I think we're getting better at it for sure.
We actually have an answer in the Q&A box from a different Sheila. So Sheila's not answering her own question. This is a different Sheila who says, Artist First has an intergenerational art program, opening minds through art for individuals experiencing memory loss. So Artist First, and Jessireé, you can probably also talk about Artist First, but Artist First is a great program that's out there as well. It does a lot of work. So.
Thank you, Sheila, for your question. Thank you, Sheila, for answering. Jessireé, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to echo that Artists First is a wonderful organization. That wasn't the first program of theirs that came to mind. I was thinking about their veterans program, which is also intergenerational because they're veterans of all different ages now. But yes, thank you, Sheila.
And just to add to Consuming Kinetics Dance Company also has like a young junior company as well. So they have like these kind of, junior company members being taught by middle level company members, and then older. Also, just in the theater world, Stray Dog Theater has a silver stage program designed for actors and performers who are, I don't know how they define them, elders, and who maybe haven't been doing this for a long time and who want to get into it in the later stages. And then also COCA's programs have recently started moving to a model where they have their young people performing alongside adults and professionals in their larger stages and musical productions, so that the young people are working alongside adults and more seasoned performers, as well as kind of options of intentionality and intergenerational work on stage.
Thanks, everybody. Megan, are there any more questions there?
I do not have any more questions here.
Also, this fantastic panel was intergenerational in that we've got someone bragging about being in their 20s and other people having to complain about being salt and pepper. So fantastic work to us, you all. Great job. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Tori.
There's always room for improvement. We've got a still pretty narrow set of generations, but we can all do work to improve there as well. Well, if there are no more questions here, we are just about to our 10 o'clock hour. So I want to thank everybody on our panel here this morning for coming to speak with us, for pulling apart all of the letters in IDEA. As Julia said, it is hard to do that, but thank you all for taking a very focused look at each piece within IDEA. As a reminder to everyone, to our guests this morning, nominations for the 2022 IDEA Awards are now open. If our conversation has reminded you of other folks doing similar kinds of work in our community, I think we've got a QR code on the screen that can take you to our nominations. Categories this year are organization, individual, initiative, supporter, and workplace. Megan, I think workplace is new this year.
Yeah, we have tried workplace before, but apparently people don't have great workplaces. So if you have a great workplace that you feel fits inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, we would love for you to nominate your workplace. So hopefully there are great workplaces out there that just haven't been nominated yet.
Excellent. So nominations are due on January 2nd, and the awards will be presented January 18th. And Megan, this QR code will take folks to a nomination page?
Yes, it will take you directly to a nomination page, and you can also go to, I think at 9 o'clock, it was hitting the if you go to Mind's Eye and go to our blog, you can also get there as well. And we'll post it up. I'll send it out in the email. We'll post it on the ACAC Facebook page. We'll put it everywhere, but this QR code will take you directly there.
Excellent. Well, thank you all again. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you all for all of our guests who joined us this morning. Don't forget to make your nominations for the 2022 IDEA Awards.
And thank you to our sponsors, Ameren, Illinois, Lighthouse for the Blind, and the United Way. And thank you to Julia, Jessireé, Aaron, Adam, and Tori, to our ASL interpreters, Kayleen and Ty. This was the first time we've had Kayleen and Ty. Thanks, guys. You were great. To our CART interpreter from Here Inc., Lee, and our audio describer from Mind's Eye, April. And we will see you on January 18th for the IDEA Awards. Please, everyone nominate. We want to have a really, really hard time choosing winners. So that's all I got. Thanks for everybody for coming. Great panel, guys. Thanks, Tori.